psychics. The reason that they're unreliable has to do with the body. Its various changing chemical constituents, hormonal influences, etc. It can't be the same from time after time after time. Yet this is the antenna that we're using to pick up the vibrations that are coming back through us to us on the time stream. And that antenna is sometimes tuned and sometimes isn't. The problem is that our stage here is really what initially George was also of this opinion, was that our computer is not really our antenna. It's merely more our receiver.
Yeah.
We still need the humans as the antenna.
Yeah. But I mean, everything you're saying goes nowhere in saying no to what I said. I mean, ultimately, it seems to me that some future form of what you're doing, or I don't know what's being done at Princeton, all of this is going to coalesce into a pretty fine, reliable
receiver or tune.
Whatever you want to call it. It doesn't, much more reliable than an individual human experience.
There is one problem.
How I used to explain it to George and anybody who asked. It's rather odd that you would ask that question about psychics, because I used to explain it this way, and people could grasp it relatively easily. That imagine that there's 10,000 psychics born to every million people. Only most of these 10,000 don't know they're psychic. They are, but they're just not aware of it. Well, some of that psychic ability is leaking through in the language that they use on a day-to-day basis.
I'm sure
we're
it is.
just noting the changes.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. But you're doing so in a already far more disciplined manner. So as you refine this, I really do see it taking over the job of a psychic.
There is a problem with it, Art. And the problem with it is that by their nature, web bots only pick up, unfortunately, large-scale negative emotions so far.
Yeah. Well, they're the strong ones that we seem to have.
Yeah, and in the world, in the psychic world, the individual psychic might be able to tune into something more positive.
I don't know. My experience with psychics, people who look at future world events, some of the very best in the world, I get to interview them, as well as people who work in the realm of remote viewing. I mean, all of this I sort of lump together. And when I look at it, frankly, it's exactly the same realm that you all are working in, whether you know it or not. It really is the same realm. I'm convinced. And
you're saying then that you think that more negative information comes back than positive?
Well, I know it does. I interview the people who do this, so I know. And so you're getting the same kind of negative stuff.
Well, it may be then that we're limited to, that's the tuning on our receivers, our antennas, and we just may have to figure out a new way to tune them. It may be that we could do that with the computers.
It would be my opinion that you're just getting what's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably quite accurate.
Yeah. You're just getting what's out there, and you're all looking at the same thing. But you're doing it in so much more of a disciplined way. Where are you going to take, how are you going to go to the next level of...
The problem for us comes down to computing power and storage.
I suppose it would, yes.
I mean, literally we run up against a money wall because in order to take it to the next level, right at the moment our lexicon that we're working with, words that we match against, is about 250,000 in size. Our original 110,000 Oxford English dictionary that I more or less borrowed when I was having some discussion with them and then altered for my own purpose, as well as all the new words that we've populated, including geographic references and so on. But that could easily be 1 million words. Also bear in mind that even though I know a number of different other human languages, I'm not a native speaker of them. Therefore, I'm reluctant to assign an emotional value to a particular word in another language, not knowing, for instance, how a particular word in Sanskrit is.
Well, that's why you need the CIA.
That's why we need linguists to do this on a serious way. Correct.
Or, some large agency type.
Yeah, some deep pocket.
They are the exact people who should be interested in this. Now, have you had any follow-up to the letter from the CIA at all? Or are you going to follow up?
We've had some follow-up from them in the sense that they're still interested and they want to keep our information on file. So at least they're not round filing it.
Right.
But we've also had some discussions with those people that might be considered to be primary contractors for the government under Department of Defense work. And the problem I've run into in discussing the thing with the managers is trying to get the concept across, and while the value is implied, the methodology sounds so strange that it sounds basically too unreliable.
Okay, well, here's the road that I think you're going to have to take. You're going to have to refine this to the point where you do what you just did, even as unsavory as it may seem. You sent me an email with a timestamp on it. You're going to have to begin to log, record predictions, even if they're just very general predictions for a certain time. I don't know how specific you can get at this point, but you know, you're going to have to begin to log a record, and at least, if nothing else, at the end of the day, or quite a few days, you all will develop a record that will defy somebody not to look into how you're doing it. That may be an unsavory way for you to pursue this, but I don't see any other course right now. Do you?
I don't think we're opposed to that, and we've in fact been doing that ever since, August, George? August of 2001 when we first started timestamping with the military?
Right. So yeah, we've got timestamps on, I think 4 or 5 of the webbots so far.
And they all came out positive with respect to your forecast?
Yeah,
correct, more or less, in the sense that, for instance, when everybody was running around saying the DC sniper was a lone white individual in a white van,
yes,
we had information indicating it was 2 individuals, one with a subservient relationship to the other, related to the military, Islam was involved, and all these other...
family problems, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in fact, it's kind of curious. One of the readers of my website actually sent in the insignia from Fort Lewis of the particular Army group. I mean, we had things that were associated with military paratrooper kinds of things, including globes circling above and so forth. And to us, you know, it's like, okay, we've been there, we've time-stamped, and I think really one of our motivations for being on your show tonight is to put it out there because we're confident there are other researchers. And for example, Princeton, I mean, if you took the Princeton Egg Project and married it up with our project, you know, it's like getting a number of different perspectives, and if you can then take all of those,
yes,
it's like diversity receivers almost.
You know, absolutely. Absolutely. And there may be others out there. Who knows what kind of research is going on. Again, when was that real aha moment, when you describe that again, when you realized that instead of just seeing a sort of a return expected on economic data that you were seeking, which is a legitimate reason to have started into all of this, to begin to see these other things.
That was really in June of 2001. Now, bear in mind, I'd been plotting this since perhaps mid-1999 in IntelliCAD, and I was used to seeing, for all intents and purposes, it looks like fireworks. I mean, there are various different little colored dots that appear to move in short little bursts as I advance the program. And all of a sudden, there was this aha moment because the movement of the dots no longer was sort of a little jerky and random. They all coalesced into what I was specifically looked like a tipping point. And that's when I contacted George and said, George, something's up.
All right. Listen, aside from the work you're doing right now, you wrote that you have some concerns about the future of the Internet itself. What are those? What are you worried about?
I think there are a couple of things that are interesting about the Internet. One is that the Internet is this place where consciousness can coalesce into groups, you know, news groups, discussion groups, and so forth.
Right.
And it's not from, you know, when you step back and look at it from the long wave economic perspective, it's not at all dissimilar to the period that happened in the late 1920s. If you recall, radio was the new technology of the 1920s, and when the country ran into a huge economic mess in the 1930s in the Depression, one of the things the government did was slapped regulations on use of radio, and that was all embodied in the Communications Act of 1933.
Which resulted in several thousand radio companies being condensed into relatively few.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There was a tremendous contraction. I think it's a reasonable concern to look at the internet the same way. I mean, right now anybody can put a server up, as both Clif and I have done, and I figure it's probably only a matter of time until government figures out that, hey, we really ought to regulate the number of servers because the amount of bandwidth, yada, yada.
Oh, licensing. But again, we've already seen a huge deterioration in the internet itself, in the sense that when we began the project in the heyday of 1999 with the internet bubble really expanding to its maximum point, since then I have found literally hundreds of servers that have been taken offline as companies have gone out of business. And these servers hosted far more than just company information frequently. They acted as email servers, routers for news groups, etc.
Yes. So what are you trying to tell me? I mean, surely the internet is not in decline.
It sounds like you're saying
that. Well, it sounds like, well, what do you mean it certainly is?
In terms of the total number of hosts, potential internet server hosts, now bear in mind it's a distributed system. So the more servers make the whole system that much more robust. And if an internet company in Seattle goes out of business and takes 1,200 servers offline.
Yeah, that's a big deal, all right. But I mean, in general, the internet seems like it's growing in popularity for the people using it.
It seems to be concentrating, sir. I don't want to dispute you because you're correct in specific areas. The popularity is increasing, and for my line of work, so to speak, it's very good because the part of the popularity that's increasing are the discussion boards, the human-to-human interaction that I want to try and capture.
Fertile ground for you.
Correct. But at the same time, a lot of the resources and the computing power that we were using to capture some of that is now gone, in the sense that I don't know how many internet companies have gone bust in the blow-up, but up in Seattle there were probably quite literally on the order of maybe 4,000 or 5,000 servers that went offline with just that little area alone when its internet companies went bust.
Might that not be part of the shorter economic cycle, George?
Sure, absolutely. But on the longer time scale, one of the concerns we've had in the WebBots outputs has been that they keep seeming to indicate that from November 2003 forward, and this goes back to some of our 2001 runs, there was some question about the relevance of the U.S. Fed and the future of the overall global economy. And that's kind of worrisome stuff, especially now that since November, the decline of the dollar has picked up speed. I'm just noticing, you had the thing from that gold group. We've had the price of gold trading just here in the time your show's been on. We're only $1.20 away from $4.20 gold.
Wow.
And so one of the real questions is, here we've got this really cool technology, and the threats to it are, one, we could be right, and the Fed could become irrelevant, along with the U.S. Standing as the global reserve currency. Then there's the dropping number of what was the dropping number of servers. I think we've seen it stabilize, and I think we'll see growth resume. But then there's the issue of taxation. When something gets successful enough,
that's right.
Government looks at it and says, "Hey, this is a deep pocket for us, and we've got a $44 trillion black hole in the budget."
I frequently